All right, finally. I have had a time trying to just get on here, but I don't usually like to do a live feed. Um, but in this particular case, since tomorrow might be too late, um, today is December 7th. This is an important day in the history of the United States and the history of the world. On this day in 1941, the United States was attacked by the Empire of Japan at the naval base in Pearl Harbor. And that was kind of a big deal. That's what got the United States involved in World War II. Up till that time, it was just the Far East and Europe, but then we got into it. And that's my grandfather's generation. My great uncle fought in that war. So that's that generation, the greatest generation. Now, why did they do? What was the motivation for those guys to go off overseas? Because very little action actually happened on American soil. They all had to go to Europe, to various islands in the Pacific Ocean to fight this war, to fight these forces of tyranny. What was their motivation to do that? Well, I mean, the motivation for doing that was simply the freedoms that were best illustrated by Franklin Roosevelt's four freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom from want, freedom from fear. Those are the four freedoms that he talked about. And they should still be important today to everyone. So, looking at current events, let's put on our thinking caps, our critical thinking caps, and it doesn't matter if you're liberal or conservative. Let's just put on our critical thinking caps and ask some very important fundamental questions about what direction we're going in. Now, you've heard me say this before. There are about 370 million American citizens right now, and it's divided roughly in half. Both halves are diametrically opposed. By diametrically opposed, that means there's no middle ground. You're either here or there. Okay, as far as political philosophy goes. But, you know, in spite of the fact that half of the people are going to wind up getting disenfranchised out of this, I think, we are fast approaching the point in time. Are we going to embrace liberty and freedom, or are we going to embrace socialism and oppression? Now, there's a lot of Antifa thugs and BLMers out there claiming that liberty is oppression. Yeah, that's right out of dystopian novels like 1984. But the fact of the matter is, that's the choice that we're being faced with right now. And the reason we're being issued that choice is because there are elements on the world stage right now that are calling for a new world order, a global reset. What that means is they want to be in charge of everybody. They want to rule over everybody. If you've listened to any of my economic videos on economics, you know what I'm about to say. Socialism and democracy are mutually exclusive. They go together like oil and water, right? Socialism can't survive as long as there is a functional democracy out there. Okay, can't survive. The reason being that freedom and liberty will always trump oppression. And in order for a socialist economy to function, it is by definition, it must have oppression by the government. Now, this transition has been going on since Stalin came into power. We thought it was over when the Cold War ended, when the Berlin Wall came down, but no, it didn't. There have been elements in this country ever since the Berlin Wall came down that want to see democracy ended throughout the world. So mostly it has been the communists pushing the buttons and people in the United States, in the free world, operating on apathy and ignorance. Okay. Now, the Democrats are the ones who signed on to this agenda. If you look at what they're doing, how they're doing it, and this is where we're going to put on our critical thinking caps, because we're going to examine this forensically. Okay, we're going to use some science, real science, not the stuff they talk about science, but real science using scientific method. By the way, scientific method means that you identify an issue, you form a hypothesis to solve the issue, you experiment and collect data on your hypothesis, and at the end of your study, you look at the data and decide whether or not your hypothesis is valid using the data. That's a little bit different than the Al Gore version of scientific method, which is, I have come to a conclusion. I want to find data to support my conclusion. And if it doesn't support my conclusion, it's invalid data, because my conclusion needs to be the final point. That's not scientific method. So we need to ask some basic fundamental questions. Okay. And I made a list here on my iPad. Just one of those things I do once in a while when I have a little bit of spare time. Okay. Question number 1. If there's nothing to hide, why are the Democrats fighting against a legitimate audit so hard? I mean, think about it. An audit would clarify who wins, who loses. An audit would legitimize the ballots. Okay. If you have some fraudulent ballots in the mix, they get booted out in an audit. Legal, proper ballots don't get booted out in an audit. They get counted, which is what we want, what everybody should want, I would think. But yet the Democrats are fighting this tooth and nail, which, my critical thinking, raises the hairs on the back of my neck, because it's like, that's a signal that they're hiding something. What are they hiding? Are they involved in some kind of fraudulent activity? Because, it sure seems that way if they're fighting so hard to evade a legitimate audit. I don't know. Biden has talked long and hard about bringing America together. We're all going to be one big happy family. Well, first of all, can we really be one big happy family if half of the voters are disenfranchised? Because there may or may not have been fraud involved. I would think Biden would be leading the charge for audits. He would want to legitimize his position as president-elect. That if it were me, that'd be what I would be doing. If there was a question about the legitimacy of the vote, I would be the first one in line. Let's get this straight. Let's get this right. That doesn't seem to be what he's doing. And have you noticed that his choices for his cabinet, his government, those are not choices designed to bring America together? I mean, look at these people that he's bringing in. These are choices that are designed to polarize the country in even more ways, to break down all kinds of I mean, he's returning to kind of the Obama administration's level of policies, which have basically created all of these racial and various barriers to different classes of people. It's like trying to generate some kind of class warfare. It really is. And that's what happened under the Obama administration. And apparently that's what Biden is looking for under his administration. Also, the economic issues. Do we really think that returning to Barack Obama's economic policies is going to benefit us in any way? I don't see that happening. You bring back all the overregulation and economic crushing decisions that the Obama administration made over the years, and then you pile on with resurrecting Obamacare and the Green New Deal. Yeah. And it makes you wonder who's really running the Biden administration government, because these are all things that are going to crush the life out of the American economy and open it up to the Great Reset, which Biden has already endorsed. The Great Reset. uh, that would really bring on a catastrophe. By the way, is there anyone out there yet that still believes that the coronavirus was a natural mutation? I don't, and I don't think there's too many people left out there that do, but there are some. Uh, why was the coronavirus created? I will say that my original estimate was that the Chinese were experimenting with biological weapons. They wanted to see what the West's reaction would be, how long it would take for the virus to spread, and how much of a boomerang effect it would have. I think that was wrong. I think this is the weapon. Okay. This is what happened, what they came up with, and they are using it to crush the Western democracies economically and to force the issue. Primarily, they wanted to get rid of Donald Trump and Boris Johnson. For those of you who don't know, Boris Johnson is the Prime Minister of Britain, who said the people have voted. We are leaving the EU, and he's making it happen. That's not something that globalists want to see happen. That was never supposed to take place. And we are now coming down to their last gasp. If Trump wins, the EU will most likely collapse because there are other states looking at pulling out of the EU. If Biden wins, then all focus is going to be on dragging England and Britain back into the EU, because the EU is part of the globalist regime. By the way, is there anybody out there that really believes the corona numbers coming from the media? I sure don't believe them. There have been too many false positives, false negatives. And, if they want to say, casualties, use the term casualties, I'm good with that. Because as far as I'm concerned, they're casualties of this conflict. And I have a feeling that the coronavirus isn't the only thing that's going to be creating casualties out of this. There's a lot of people saying, well, you know what, let's just go with Biden for right now, and this whole voter fraud thing will work itself out, and we'll get it right in 2024. Does anybody who believes that Biden rigged the election believe in any way, shape, or form that anything will ever change again? I don't. The Democrats have worked very hard since Al Gore lost the election. And you can look at the elections as they go. Al Gore lost. He was supposed to do what Obama eventually wound up doing. That was his job, but he lost the election. And they tried to change the ballots. They were furious they didn't get it done. With Hillary, they did a much better job, but it just wasn't enough to push her over the top. because they didn't actually realize that she was not a well-liked individual. This time they brought all their guns out and they targeted certain areas, just like they did with Hillary. And they had everything laid out before the election. Unlike with Al Gore, where they were trying to play catch up after the fact. Here they had the ballots and everything all done up ahead of time and managed to infiltrate them into the system. So, they only had to hit certain counties in certain states, and that's what they focused on. I said that was coming. For everybody who was all bent out of shape about foreign influence on a president who was clearly the most transparent president in the history of the nation, I think, and certainly not beholden to anyone. Why is the media shutting down on the potential for foreign influence on gropey Joe Biden? They don't have to adhere to the same standard as the rest of us? Because I can already tell there's a lot of foreign influence streaming in and out of the Biden. And then they haven't even taken office yet. So, yeah, this is not looking good for us, and it certainly doesn't set a marker that we can be proud of as our grandfathers and our fathers who fought and died to prevent this kind of tyranny. So maybe today we should think about and consider the fact that the tyranny that they fought for or fought against, the tyranny that they defeated, are we going to invite that tyranny into our lives and the lives of our children and grandchildren? What kind of a world are we leaving them? Some things to consider, and I'm gotten a little long-winded here. That's why I usually like to video record these, but I just ran out of time. So I will see you on the next Flyover Country.